and when I started Mumsnet, I literally started it because I felt I wasn't able to be honest in the previous careers I've had, and the women I worked with who were mothers, I saw them pretending their kids didn't exist.
How can entrepreneurs identify a gap in the market?
I think very often with entrepreneurs, what they do is fulfill their own need, really. So it was certainly true in my case with Mumsnet that I was a new parent of young twins, and I needed all the advice and help I could get. And my immediate circle didn't quite have all the answers for me. So I wanted to expand that and tap into the wisdom of millions of other people via this wonderful thing called the internet. And I think that's often where people get their inspiration from, is they find a gap in the market because it's not because they need that product or service really badly for their own life. And the great thing is, if you're constructing something to meet your own needs, you're very clear on what you actually want and how it should work. And it gets harder as you grow, and you get more and more divorced from the original target market. So in my case now, I'm sort of slightly outside the target market for Mumsnet. So I have to work really hard about staying in touch. But originally, for the ideas, I think it's find something where you would like to make the world a better place because you know what that product or service should be from your own experience.
What can entrepreneurs do to stand out from the crowd, particularly in a saturated market?
I think the key to standing out is really fulfilling whatever the consumer is, your customer's job to be done. So I don't think you're going to stand out if you just produce a generic product the same as everyone else's and make a big noise about it. What you really want is people to be talking about the product themselves, because it's doing something better. Either it's your service that's better, or it's the product itself that's better, or it's a different price point. So to be honest, I think that you have to be different. You have to have a USP. You can't really expect, unless I guess you're Amazon and you have millions and millions of pounds of and data and customers already and a lot of trust. If you're new into a field, then I think you have to do something different, and you have to make the customers' lives easier in some way.
What message or advice do you have for women in a male-dominated working environment?
Well, I've worked in two very male-dominated working environments. I've worked in the City of London, initially on the stock exchange floor, where I was one of two women of hundreds of men, and then I became a football and cricket journalist. I think the world's moved on a bit because it's not so normal to be in such a minority. But I think generally what I found was you've got to kind of be as good as, actually, in fact, better than the guys around you, and it's not always fair, but there's no point moaning about it. You just got to get on and really address that sort of conscious and unconscious bias by proving people wrong. So I think that's number one. I think, as I say, nowadays it's a bit better, and what I would always suggest you do is find your network, particularly if there's women around. Make sure you're supporting each other, because the guys will definitely be supporting each other. Work hard, find your network, and don't get downhearted, because the only way we change things is by buckling down and getting to the top, and then it's easier to make a difference.
How can businesses best support the working parents in their company?
So the number one thing I think parents want from business and from their employer is flexibility. All our surveys with Mumsnet say that actually is more important than anything else. The flexibility to be able to be honest and say, actually, you know what, my family comes first, and yes, I love my job, but it's always going to take second place to my family. And when I started Mumsnet, I literally started it because I felt I wasn't able to be honest in the previous careers I've had. And the women I worked with who were mothers, I saw them pretending their kids didn't exist. So I think allowing that sort of level of honesty, and I think then really focusing on flexibility and walking in the shoes of the people you're trying to support, whether that's so your employees who are going off on parental leave, making sure, for instance, that they feel confident when they come back because they've been kept in touch with things, and not everything hasn't completely transformed while they've been away, or whether it's understanding that if you've got people working part-time or flexibly, schedule the meetings in the middle of the day or when they're around. Don't schedule meetings when they're not around. Try not to make everything about what happens in the pub after work, because parents have to go back and do bedtime. So some basic stuff, but it's really no more different than putting yourself in the shoes of the people of your colleagues, and trying to show some basic understanding, and that plus flexibility is what parents really need.
What can businesses learn from your experience of founding Mumsnet?
Well, Mumsnet in many ways was founded at completely the wrong time. So we came about sort of 5 or 6 years before Twitter and Facebook, and the sort of business model wasn't really ready for the business. So we had to go very slowly, on a shoestring budget, build the community by word of mouth, and wait, if you like, for the business model to materialize. So we got a very large community before we could really generate any revenue out of it. And I think there's a lesson in that. Had I raised a lot of money and hired a lot of people, it would have been just at the time of the dot-com crash, and I would have had to fire a lot of people, and we probably would have gone out of business. So I think the lesson really is that you need to adapt the pace at which you go according to the market, and then when the time becomes right, then you can go all guns blazing, raise money, hire people, really go for growth. But growth isn't always the right model. Sometimes the right model is easy does it, build your brand, build your trust, and wait for the economics to come right for you.
What do you hope audiences take away from your public speeches?
I would like people to realise that people aren't kind of born entrepreneurs. You don't have to think of yourself as the winner of The Apprentice to run and start a business. It's a journey, and it's a journey where you grow and you learn all the time. I mean, I still pick up valuable lessons all the time. And I think this is true of women. Men sometimes claim that they're entrepreneurs just by opening a cupboard, whereas I'm always feel uncomfortable calling myself an entrepreneur, because I just think, oh well, I just created something that responded to my own need. So I think the truth is, a bit more humility all round would go a long way, and people who think they know it all and can do it all, before they've even got started, usually end up falling flat on their face, because frankly none of us do. None of us know it all. We're all going to make mistakes, and it's not about avoiding mistakes, it's about learning very quickly from them and being humble enough to keep learning.